I have Muslims messaging me about how I need to take their side. I have the British messaging me about the fact that I was raised in the UK and I should take the British Patriots side. I've made it clear that I think people should only enter the country legally, and I believe that people who were natively born to a land have a right to that land. And for it to be conquered by military-age males from far away is going to be upsetting and distressing to any red-blooded male on the planet. However, this false dichotomy of sides, choose a team, is exactly what the Matrix wants. Because I'm going to tell you what is going to happen for certain by the end of this. If the two teams continue to fight each other, absolutely nothing will be achieved. 95% of people who are on the streets have legitimate concerns that they want to be voiced and heard and respected. Probably on both sides of the equation. And then there's going to be a small contingent on both sides, which are going to be violent and have knives and guns, etc., etc. Those are going to be the ones highlighted by the media. Those are going to be the ones who are purported out to be being told they were the whole group. Everybody was like these people. They're mindless. They're senseless. They have no point of view. They have no legitimate concerns. They just love violence. That's going to be the media spin. And what the UK government is going to do by the end of this whole scenario, unless people get their act together and realize that the problem is actually the elites in Westminster and not the people they live amongst, is that there's going to be no more right to protest, no more right to assemble, stricter rules about speech online, stricter rules about having a point of view, and you're going to find more and more people having their doors knocked in the middle of the night by police officers and taken to cells for saying things which are legitimate and which are true because they have concerns about the safety of their children. More people are going to end up being charged with hate speech or some kind of inciting to violence or some other kind of subjective garbage to prevent anybody from voicing their opinion anymore. And the elites are sitting there in their ivory castle laughing because you have the poor browns fighting the poor whites, and they know by the end of it they'll have all the excuses they need to just take away more freedoms from everybody, the poor browns and the poor whites. That's how it's going to end. You can't preach the idea of a multicultural society, then ignore the views and concerns of one particular culture within that multicultural society, especially if you're pandering to those of another culture, and especially if the culture being ignored is the native culture. You can't do that without expecting violence. Perhaps you'd ask, maybe they do expect violence. Maybe they want to, because the answer to it all is just going to be Keir standing up saying, we need tougher laws, 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 laws. And those laws will be abused because laws are always abused by the government. So they're going to say it's for your safety, but eventually the laws are going to be abused to prevent you from ever having a point of view on anything ever again, ever expressing your opinion on anything ever again. And it's not only going to be the white people who are suppressed, it's going to be the other side who are suppressed also. We're all just going to end up in the same mush. You know, I've traveled the world enough to see, guys, I promise you, it's rich versus poor. It's not poor black versus poor white. It's not poor brown versus poor white. It's rich versus poor. There are people in the world who have no interest at all in the sanctity and safety of society. They're interested in protecting only their money and their profits, and they're going to allow the streets to run with blood to do that. Those are the problem, much more than the people you live amongst. I don't think we're going to be able to convince anybody of that in time to stop this violence, but it's the truth of the situation. And unless everybody gets together and understands that, the future is going to be quite dystopian for the common man. Because if all these people rioting were instead outside of Westminster demanding change from politicians, then we might get change from politicians. But this ant-on-ant fighting isn't going to work. You know, there's a really interesting analogy. If you put black ants and red ants in a jar, they don't fight until you shake the jar. Because then they get mad. And they say, who shook our jar? And they start to kill each other. Because the black ants think the red ants shook the jar, and the red ants think the black ants shook the jar. Truthfully, neither of them shook the jar. Someone else did, who wanted them all to fight in the first place.